Good morning, everyone. Today I want to talk to you about a critique that I have of Dr. Peterson as a Hindu coming from Asia. And this is no means a critique in the sense of just being harsh or landing on his political views. This is more as a person who has found some of his ideas very useful and insightful. In fact, I watched all three of his major lectures on YouTube, from the biblical analysis one to maps of meanings to personality traits, and also have benefited a lot from the self-authoring program. But there are three things of his ideas that if I put out there, I hope it will benefit him and benefit his analysis and what he's trying to do as sort of a magnus opus of his life. So the first thing that fundamentally I disagree with Jordan Peterson is that his focus on Christian theology as a bedrock of Western civilization is kind of flawed. If we look at the entire chronology of Western civilization, the point where it was most rooted in Judeo-Christian values and took it more seriously is during the time of the Dark Ages. We are here today in the Brocken Forest, where Goethe was inspired to write Faust. The Grimm brothers, which wrote many of the stories that Dr. Peterson analyzes for maps of meaning, such as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella, were inspired by this region. The emblem of this region is witches, and it used to be a major pagan sacrifice location. And this was the kind of mystical and fantastical underbelly that has also influenced Western civilization. 2 hours from here, Nietzsche's house is where Nietzsche grew up, and ironically enough, Martin Luther, who led the Protestant movement, also was born not far from here. So the enlightenment of the Western civilization, and when it came out of the Dark Ages, when it returned to Greco-Roman values of enlightenment, humanism, scientificism, is one of the hallmarks of Western civilization and how it started to progress. So while Dr. Peterson has been very good at looking at traditions all around the world, he has veered away from that slightly and tried to focus on Christianity a bit too much. So, for example, Buddhism really goes into the psychology of things and the different aspects of the mind and how that is connected to a consciousness or a superstructure of reality. And it will be much more fruitful in trying to analyze it from the Eastern perspective than trying to hair-split it with the Abrahamic traditions. The last few things that I want to highlight upon is there's a lot more stories and richness in the Eastern traditions that he can bank on to make his points. For example, speaking the truth. The whole idea of the Ramayana, there's a phrase from it, Ragukula riti sada chaliyai, pranan jai lakin vachanan jai. You can die, but you can never speak a lie or break your promise. And these entire stories or the world's longest poems, such as the Mahabharata, are focused on these elements of what is it to tell the truth, what is it to make a prediction about the future, what does it mean to make a promise, and how does the social construct depend on it, and how much are you willing to go as a society to preserve those elements. So for these reasons, it will make more sense for Dr. Peterson to break out of trying to find values in the Judeo-Christian tradition and look to the East to complete his analysis. The third place where Dr. Peterson's ideas and mine diverge is the idea of meaning and responsibility. Now, he's right to say that man is sort of a mule and needs a burden to carry, and he tries to relate that to the Christian idea of having a cross to bear. But once again, in the Eastern faith, the continuity from the macro and the theological ideas all the way down to civic duty can be encapsulated in one word, dharma, or the way, or that which upholds. And there's never a conversation about rights, because someone's rights is always someone else's responsibilities. But the question is always about dharma. And the dharma is broken down into many different layers and many different spheres of influence. For example, your dharma as to the environment is different from your dharma as a person of society, or your dharma to your children or to your family. And all these different responsibilities link to each other, but and at times they even come into conflict. For example, my dharma as a person of the economy as against to my dharma as a person to the environment. Once again, this links very nicely with the idea of a consciousness, because the more you do your dharma, the more society becomes better and society becomes controlled. The calmer the world becomes, the calmer your mind becomes. Do you get a real sense of what consciousness is and what is the nature of reality, which once again in the Eastern traditions is given by many different names. In the West, it used to be called Logos. In the East, it's called Tao, Brahman, and the Buddhists call it by a different name. Compare this with the Abrahamic or Christian theology of trying to call it God, the Trinity, or the Spirit. It just doesn't jive as well because it's not inherent in those words and meanings. So for these reasons, I hope when Dr. Peterson comes out of his hiatus, or even for those of us who are